That's okay. Maybe it's just a brief discussion.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is now 5:30, and I will call this regular meeting of the Burnsville City Council to order. It is our tradition to stand for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, and we invite you to join us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The clerk will note that all council members are present. We're still in the midst of a public health crisis, and so we continue to work and make sure that we are transparent, and the work that we do for the public is televised. So tonight's meeting is being conducted in person. Our city council members and staff are in the council chambers and practicing social distancing. Members of the public may attend in person if they like. They may also watch this meeting online at burnsvillemn.gov/meetings or Comcast channel 16 or 859. If you would like to participate during the meeting remotely, you may join online at zoom.us/join, or you can call in at 651-372-8299. Callers will need to dial *9 to raise their hand to speak and dial *6 to unmute when we open the time for comments. More information is available on our meeting's webpage and in the council agenda packet. The next item on the agenda is our announcements, and tonight we have 5 proclamations. So when I get to that, I will speak to how we're going to do that, because we've never had so many proclamations in one night, but we have 2 new ones for the month of October that we usually don't have. So I'm going to modify them. But our council meetings are scheduled, regular council meetings are scheduled for Tuesday, October 20th at 5:30 and Monday, November 2nd at 5:30 p.m. We moved the meeting from Tuesday to Monday, November 2nd, due to general elections on Tuesday, November 3rd, and it's against the law for us to hold meetings during the election. Work sessions are scheduled Tuesday, October 13th at 5:30 p.m. and Tuesday, October 27th at 5:30 p.m. We also have a special work session scheduled for Monday, October 12th at 10 a.m., and that will be here in the council chambers as well. And it is our belonging and inclusion session with the YMCA. So, members of the council and staff and public, we have 5 proclamations. So what I'm going to do to keep us moving is that if you want to read the proclamations, please go to the website and access our council packet, and you can read the entire proclamation. But tonight I'm going to read at least 2 or 3 whereases for each proclamation and then move on to the now therefore. So the first proclamation is Fire Prevention Week. Whereas the city of Burnsville is committed to ensuring the safety and security of all those living in and visiting Burnsville. And whereas fire is a serious public safety concern both locally and nationally, and homes are the location where people are at greatest risk from fire. Whereas the 2020 Fire Prevention Week theme, Serve Up Fire Safety in the Kitchen, effectively serves to remind us to stay alert and use caution when cooking to reduce the risk of kitchen fires this week and all year round. Now, therefore, I, Elizabeth Couts, Mayor of the City of Burnsville, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim the week of October 4th through the 10th, 2020, to be Fire Prevention Week in Burnsville, proclaimed this 6th day of October, 2020. The next proclamation is Manufacturing Week, October 1st through the 7th. Whereas manufacturing is a dynamic and robust industry crucial to the health and strength of Minnesota's diverse economy, and whereas manufacturing added $52.7 billion to Minnesota's economy in 2019, representing the second largest contribution, 14%, to the state's gross domestic product by any industry. And whereas manufacturing provides 324,000 highly skilled, well-paying jobs, which significantly contribute to Minnesota's high standard of living and economic vitality. Now, therefore, I, Elizabeth Kautz, Mayor of the City of Burnsville, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim October 1st to October 7th, 2020 as Manufacturing Week in Burnsville, proclaimed this 6th day of October 2020. The next proclamation is National Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Whereas the National Breast Cancer Awareness Month was established to increase awareness about the disease and the importance of screening and early detection. And whereas 1 in 8 women will be diagnosed with breast cancer at some point during their lifetime, and the American Cancer Society estimates that more than 276,000 new cases of invasive breast cancer will be diagnosed this year. And whereas the City of Burnsville is committed to raising awareness about breast cancer and the impact it has on our loved ones, friends, colleagues, and community members, and proclaiming our commitment to prevention, detection, and treatment of breast cancer. And now, therefore, I, Elizabeth Kautz, Mayor of the City of Burnsville, on behalf of the City Council, and in honor of all that have fought against breast cancer, do hereby proclaim October 2020 to be National Breast Cancer Awareness Month in Burnsville, and encourage all women to become aware that they are at risk and to check with their doctor to see whether they should get a mammogram, proclaimed this 6th day of October 2020. The next proclamation is for Night to Unite. This one we usually do in August, but because it's been delayed, it is here to be read. Whereas the Minnesota Crime Prevention Association, along with AAA and local law enforcement, are sponsoring a statewide program called Night to Unite on October 6, 2020. And whereas Night to Unite 2020 is designed to safely engage with your neighborhood and bring police, fire, local government, and communities together to bring an awareness to crime prevention and local enforcement efforts. Whereas during the COVID-19 global pandemic, many traditional Night to Unite activities have been canceled, but there are still neighborhood organizers have signed up to receive city care packages that contain handouts, information, and fun trinkets for families to enjoy. And now, therefore, I, Elizabeth Kautz, Mayor of the City of Burnsville, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby declare October 6, 2020, as Night to Unite in Burnsville, and call upon all citizens of Burnsville to safely participate in Night to Unite activities that strengthen neighborhoods and carry the spirit of Night to Unite throughout the rest of the year, proclaimed this 6th day of October 2020. Our last proclamation is Community Planning Month, October 2020, and this is a new one also. So, whereas change is constant and affects all cities, towns, suburbs, counties, boroughs, townships, rural areas, and other places. And whereas community planning and plans can help manage this change in a way that provides better choices for how people work and live. And whereas we recognize the many valuable contributions made by the professional community and regional planners of the City of Burnsville, and extend our heartfelt thanks for the continued commitment to public service by these professionals. Now, therefore, I, Elizabeth Kautz, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim October 2020 as Community Planning Month, proclaimed this 6th day of October. Okay. So those are all of our proclamations, and if you want to read the entire proclamation, you can find it on our website under our council packets for tonight. The next item on the agenda is citizens' comments. This is the opportunity for anyone in the audience to address the council on an item that is not on the printed agenda and not in application form that will be coming before us at a future date. Is there anyone who wishes to address the council? Anyone in the room, on Zoom? Okay. Seeing no one, we will move on. The next item is additions to the final agenda, and this is for emergency items only. Ms. Mescali, are there any items to be added to the final agenda?
There are not, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Members of the council, any additions? Thank you. We will move on then to the consent agenda. The consent agenda is a group of items that's considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. However, an item on the consent agenda can be removed for a separate discussion and vote. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes an item to be removed for a separate discussion and vote? I believe Mr. Wise has asked for 4L to be removed for a separate discussion and vote. And we will pull that item. Ms. Mascoli, does staff have anything to pull?
We do not, Madam Mayor.
Members of the council, Councilmember Workman.
Thank you. I'd like to pull item 4C. And I was going to pull 4L, but
Mr. Wise has pulled
it's
it.
been addressed.
Okay, thank you. May I have a motion to adopt the balance of the consent agenda?
Motion to approve the balance?
Second.
There's a motion by Councilmember Keeley, second by Councilmember Gustafson. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. And the motion carries. Thank you. Mr. Wise, I think the first one is C, so I'm going to go to Councilmember Workman, the ordinance amending council salaries. Councilmember Workman.
Thank you. I'm just pulling this because I wasn't able to attend the meeting virtually on last Saturday as I was out of town and didn't have self-service, so I wasn't able to participate in the conversation. And I'm not pulling this for any further debate or real discussion. I just wanted to voice my position on this item, that while I understand and agree with a lot of what was said in the justification for the decision that was ultimately acted on, it just feels like right now, given the circumstances with the economy and everything else, that it doesn't feel like the right time to do this. So I wanted to express that publicly since I was not able to do that on Saturday.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Are there any other comments? If not, I need a motion.
Move to approve? Second.
Councilmember Gustafson makes the motion, second by Councilmember Keeley. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
No.
Nay.
Okay, and clerk has the division of the House. Thank you very much. Okay, now the next item is item 4L, and this is the ordinance amendment to section 10-7-52 related to accessory dwelling units. And let's see. Who is going to present this from staff's point of view? Do you want to speak to the background?
I can give a high-level overview if you'd like, Mayor.
Would you please do that so that the people at home understand what it is we're talking about here? And then Mr. Weiss can speak to it.
Yep, so probably probably about 2 months ago, we received a building permit application for a detached accessory dwelling unit, and it was flagged that the proposal did not meet city code as proposed on the application. One, because it was detached, and two, because of the size of the unit. So we brought forward at a council meeting, kind of in a work session format, Staff I had presented a couple of different options to allow some flexibility within our ordinance to think about, is there support for changing our current ordinance on the books, leave it the same, or, evaluate it maybe at a future date. And the direction was go ahead and change the ordinance, one, to allow detached accessory structures within our R1 zoning districts and our R1A zoning districts on lot sizes less than an acre, no matter what the size, allow them. And then allow accessory dwelling units up to 50% in size of the principal dwelling unit. And by doing that, the building permit applicant would be allowed to move forward with their building permit. And it would allow additional flexibility for future applications to come through. So this went to Planning Commission at their last Planning Commission meeting. We did prepare a red line ordinance that addressed the consensus that we heard at the city council meeting and the direction. The red line ordinance was presented to Planning Commission. They recommended approval of that red line ordinance 5-0 at that meeting. There was discussion at the public hearing. Ms. Weiss was at the meeting giving public testimony. She did have concerns with the item that talks about park dedication fees. And within the ordinance, there is mention that this is an intensification of land use, therefore park dedication fees and I think sewer and water fees are also required. That's something that wasn't addressed by the council for direction the evening that I was before you. The Planning Commission did have some discussion around it, but ultimately their recommendation was just to go with the red line ordinance. That's what I have for you. If you have any further questions for staff, either myself or Ryan Peterson can help answer.
Okay, very good. Members of the council, any questions for staff before I call on Mr. Weiss? Okay, Mr. Weiss, please come to the microphone. Yes, and give your name and address for the record.
Can I take this up?
Sure, just hang it, yeah.
6 feet. Yeah, my name is Fred Weiss, 13605 Wellington Crescent, and in Burnsville, obviously. I'm just here to kind of reiterate what my wife did last week. I could not make it. I apologize. I was with my son down at Winona. He had a car incident, and I had to go help him out. So she covered, I think, pretty good. I think she did pretty good last week. Well, I've been going through the process. It's all been going well. Obviously, when you get into the weeds, some fees pop up, and I just felt like that I wanted to have some representation at that meeting because that was open to the public, and I think the $2,600 fee, I think, should be discussed. I think going forward, obviously, I'm looking at it as a business, but I'm trying to look at the next person down the line, and I just want some discussion what Burnsville, I'll honor whatever you guys decide, but I just think there should be discussion. That's kind of what I want to make sure I'm here, and that's discussed today. Other than that, I don't have much. It's been going pretty good.
Thank you, yeah. I've been reading through all of the background and watched the Planning Commission
Yeah,
meet.
no, it's going good. I got all the engineering specs in,
Yeah.
the foundation support.
Thank
so-
you, you told us about all of that when we,
Okay,
okay, thank you.
that's it? All right.
Yep. Okay. Ms. Dean, I think when this was presented to us, we looked at all of the regulatory aspects of this particular project, and then it falls within the policy and the code with regard to park dedication, which, can you just reiterate all of that, because the objection is to the park dedication?
So, Mayor.
Yeah, and this is a business, a home business.
So at the presentation that I gave before the city council, when you gave direction, it wasn't brought up about park dedication fees. The main things that were discussed were about detached accessory structures, if there was support for that, and if there was support for changing the size. I do recall some conversation about there may be some other things that we want to change, but let's save that for the future. So, we gave some options about things that we could look at. Do we just want to get this done and move this forward? Do we want a consultant to take a look at this and propose some additional changes? The direction that I received, I believe how I interpreted it, was move forward as quickly as possible so that this person could get their building permit. There wasn't a lot of additional analysis to say, okay, how do some of these other things impact the city of Burnsville, the neighbors, whether it was fees or density or anything else. Just let's move forward.
Okay. Any questions? I'm going to Councilmember Workman first, and then Councilmember Schultz and Councilmember Gustafson.
Thank you. I guess I want to, and to Ms. Dean's point, I don't think we got into the weeds to this level, obviously, at our last meeting, or when this ordinance was written, because we didn't have an example in front of us when we created the ADU ordinance, and now here we have one, and I guess it's probably to be expected that we're going to run into some things that we didn't foresee when the ordinance was written. So I guess I'm curious how a park dedication fee would come into play on something like this, as opposed, how do I word this right? Could somebody explain to me in layman's terms kind of what the intent of the park dedication fee is for? And I understand that we go through this, but just for the general public so that it outlays it, what the intent is and where we typically utilize those.
I'm going to go to Mr. Peterson, our Public Works Director. Mr. Peterson.
Yeah, good evening, Councilmember Workman, members of the council, and Mayor. The program or the ordinance is based upon when we get new living units available to people to live here in Burnsville, we want to provide a quality park system as well. The more units that we have that are in town, the more demand we have on our park system. And this is one of the number one ways that we can fund new expansions to the system. We can't fund our maintenance of it, but things such as the new spray nozzles that we're planning on Nicola Commons Park, expansion to the park trail system, those kinds of things are what is funded out of this. So as we have more people moving in, and that's what I understand this is for a living. They may be trying to use this as a model or something, I'm not certain. But if it is a living unit, it would be similar to any apartment building or other house that was put onto the system. There eventually would be someone living there who's going to want a nice park system that this would help fund expansions to.
Okay, Councilmember Schultz.
So are you telling me that we so say a person owns their home and then they decide to have people rent rooms inside their home. Are you telling me that we should have them pay a park dedication fee? Are those not additional people living there?
This would be associated with some type of land use or permit, something like that. No, we don't do any type of requirements, or we don't act upon someone making it available for renting.
I personally see no difference between this and having someone rent a room in their home. They're not subdividing the property. They're not selling a parcel. They're not doing any of the things that would trigger a normal park dedication fee, which normally is they are subdividing or doing other types of things like that. And that is not what is happening here. And that's also not really the intent when you're having ADUs and that type of thing. That's really not the intent, is to subdivide your property and sell your property. So I see this from a policy standpoint as zero difference than how we allow our residents to rent out rooms in their homes.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Peterson.
Councilmember Schultz, members of the council, I think the difference I would point out is my understanding this unit would have 2 new bedrooms. They're constructing a unit that has 2 new bedrooms in it. So there is an expansion of living space, which would be different than renting. a
So
room.
if a homeowner put an egress window in their basement and created a new bedroom, you're saying there should be a park dedication fee?
I'm not saying that, I'm just simply stating that they are adding 2 bedrooms, and it is another structure that's being added.
Again, I see no difference in this. If a homeowner put an egress window in their basement and they now turned 1 or 2 more bedrooms into their home, I see no difference on this. They are not selling the property. That's not what's happening here. They are not selling the property to someone else. So we do not have a property ownership change here. This is a rental situation. And I do not think that a park dedication fee in this situation is appropriate. That's my view of it. And I totally get what you're saying, and I also know that you're going through it in that way. But from a policy standpoint and how I view this, there is no difference. And I'm not going to interfere with people when they're using their property in this manner, nor am I going to penalize them for that. If someone was parceling off their property, if they were, doing other types of uses and things like that, okay, we can look at that. But say someone has their family move in with them. Are we gonna say because you had family move in with you and because now you have more people in your household than you did before, we're gonna have a park dedication fee? I think it's absurd.
Okay, Councilmember Gustafson.
I wanted to talk about the park dedication now. It's always been my understanding if a piece of land paid a park dedication, they wouldn't be paying another park dedication. What is it that triggers that causes for a second park dedication fee to be paid by the same piece of land?
Okay, Mr. Peterson.
It's the intensification of the use of the land.
The densification of the use of the
What was
land.
that?
The intensification.
Intensification of the use of the land.
So if you give birth,
Intense.
this is absurd.
Okay. Let me ask the question because I remember when we did the ADU and say which one. So one of the things that we talked about is an expansion of the primary structure, right? And at that time, did we say that it would trigger a park dedication? So it's going to be an extension of the primary structure. There'll be a door, but it is a separate structure.
So-
That is intensifying the land, and it was like a grandmother
Sweet.
home connected to the primary structure. Would that be defined as intensification of the land?
So Mayor, the trigger would be if the 2 units are physically walled off with the firewall, completely separate entrances. Even though it's attached to the house, it's almost like a duplex, but it's technically not. That would be considered an accessory dwelling unit, triggering the park dedication fee. If there was access between the attached unit, no firewall, a door you could walk through in and out, maybe it locks, but you can still have access between the two, it would not trigger the park dedication fee.
That's arbitrary.
So that's still, so when I look at this, there's an accessory structure, but it's not attached to the home. Now, for this one, we know it's a business. But I think we need to have clarification on the way that we look at these ordinance and how a park dedication fee will be triggered within a residential unit. Now, let's talk about what happens in a rural area. When we put that in place, where they can have an accessory unit, would that trigger a park dedication fee? In those lots in southwest Burnsville that are 2, 3, 4 10-acre lots?
Mayor, it would trigger a park dedication fee if it's either detached, the way our ordinance is written now, if it's detached or attached with a firewall and clear separate entrance.
Okay, so that is defined in the ordinance? Okay. I just wanted to be clear, for me, if we defined and adopted those ordinances, because I remember when we worked on the ADUs, there's the accessory units that's separated that we could have in 1 and 2 and 3 acre lots. And then there is the extension of a primary unit. So the extension of a primary unit, a park dedication fee is not triggered if it doesn't have the firewalls. But if it has a firewall, then it's triggered?
That's
And a
correct,
separate
Mayor.
entrance.
Yeah, and a separate, because right now there isn't, we said that it has an entrance from the primary structure to the extension.
That technically would not be, if it has the access between.
Yeah, the door
Living
between.
spaces, whether it's a basement, an addition to the back of the house, front of the house, whatever, side of the house, as long as there's access between, no firewall, it's not considered an accessory dwelling unit. It's considered maybe an addition or remodel or just transformation of use of how you use the space versus that firewall, that separate entrance or detached structure.
Okay, Councilmember Keely.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, I understand where Councilmember Schultz and I think Councilmember Workman are coming from, because we're really talking about a single-family home that's putting an ADU on. And I think, I would agree that in a circumstance of a lot size with a single-family home, if they expand and put a second level on and expand it to 6,000 square feet, and they have a whole bunch of people move in, we're not assessing a park dedication fee. But when it's suddenly, the trigger is splitting it and creating this separate living space, within a certain size lot, I think that should just be allowed, period, because I think it's all the same thing as Councilmember Schultz pointed out. I think our ordinance needs to be updated to protect us for those larger lots where there's actually, it's split off, right, where they're building additional buildings. Now, even if I had a 5-acre lot in southwest Burnsville and I wanted to make a 10,000 square foot home out there and invite all my relatives and grandparents to all live with me, fine. Even if there was some interior wall or I put a grandma suite in, or grandpa suite too, a grandma suite in and an entrance and exit, we're still talking about a single family home residence. We're really not talking about a commercial development where there's multiple families, different families, who are living in different structures. I think that, to me, is the spirit of that park dedication, and why it's there is when you're really growing it beyond maybe your organic family or your extension of family, where you're trying to provide them a little privacy with an ADU. I mean, that's really the beauty of doing an ADU, is you can have maybe mom and dad or grandma, grandpa come live with you so you can be closer to them, but you can at least give them a little privacy rather than all being in the same kitchen, all being in the same living room. I mean, that's really a great use of these ADUs, along with many other reasons. But I would agree, I don't think that is the right trigger to trigger the park dedication. I think it needs to be addressed in a conceptual way for single-family homes to be exempt from that, and apply it to where there's larger types of developments where there is a true growing of different families or different populations moving onto a property with different housing.
Yeah, I think this particular ordinance should come back to us so that we can really evaluate it and also take a look at the difference between an extension to a primary structure, and also when you're looking at, you can subdivide or not subdivide, but you're going to build an ADU. So
Yeah, and I think if
yeah.
they did choose to subdivide it, well, then it's a whole different
then-
home, it's a whole
then
different
that is
property,
yeah.
and park dedication is
Yeah.
triggered,
Yeah.
and it seems very
Yeah.
logical there.
So I think we should take a look at all of that. Councilmember Workman and then Councilmember Schultz.
Well, and Councilmember Keely kind of nailed in some of the points I was gonna mention, but if the intent is the intensification of the land use is what guides the park dedication fee, then that's later defined by a firewall or a door, I would look to our attorney, Joel, and I don't want to go too far down the legal rabbit hole here, but it feels like there's not a hard, clear definition on this, and that there seems to be room there for misinterpretation if intensification of the land is solely what's driving this, other than a firewall or a separate entrance.
Okay, yeah.
Mayor and
Mr.
council.
Jamnik.
Your discussion is around the edges of a complicated issue because, as indicated by Councilmember Schultz, there's expansions that are unique to the family growth. There's, actual physical additions. State law allows you in many cases to do condominiums in splits and create duplexes that don't necessarily get land use approvals. But as staff indicated, if you put in a separate setting, put in, a basement with separate ingress and egress, separate doors and the rest, you can add a completely distinct, separate family unit, not an accessory supplemental family or, relatives coming back and staying in this unit. You can have a complete and distinct family situation. It's not any different than the struggles we have with sewer availability charges, water availability charges. As you all know, Metro SAC rules regarding intensification, separate businesses, and those types of things are very complicated. This is much in that same area, and when the legislature authorized these types of units, that's the kind of questions that was raised. Does it require a separate sewer and water connection? Requiring SAC and WAC charges? From whom? How much?
Okay,
What are the
Yeah.
what are the average level of occupancy of these units? They're not usually 10 people units, so the demand on city infrastructure, regional resources, and the rest would obviously be less. But it is a complicated issue,
Yeah.
and you have to draw the lines and provide the guidance. Staff is implementing policies that have been adopted by the council.
Yeah.
It's certainly within the purview of the council to change those rules and look at the policy implications and say, what do we want to change? But I would submit that's the time to do it with your fee ordinance and take a look and have some feedback from staff regarding refinements.
Yeah.
So,
and the second whack charges are out of our control because that comes from the mid-council. If you're going to intensify the use of a particular property, you're adding more density.
correct, but we have charges in other areas
Yeah.
that are calculated for new developments. So,
Yeah, and that-
if a apartment building comes in and adds a level or expands out a wing and those types of things and creates new apartment units, we try to capture that additional impact on our park system, stormwater systems,
Yeah.
water and sewer systems that
Water
are
and
created by
sewer.
those additional units.
Yeah.
But obviously, if you are splitting a two-bedroom apartment and remodeling it to two single micro-efficiency apartments, the odds are potentially, depending on who occupies it, you could either have a reduced loading on your infrastructure or an increased loading on your infrastructure.
Yeah.
But those are the kinds of policy debates that the city council has to review in an organized fashion and saying, here's what we want our fee schedule to look like. Here are some of the intended consequences or unintended consequences we want to address. And that is something that council has done in the past and will
Yeah.
do in the future.
And I think we need to take a look at that because you're right, it's complicated because it takes into consideration all of the utilities. That's water, sewer, and others. So we should take a look at all of that.
And there may be situations where you keep the additional charge in because there's a separate plumbing connection.
Yeah.
Here with the parks, we don't have a direct connection, but in many cases, our stormwater systems, we don't either.
Yeah.
And yet, when we're creating more impervious surface by putting the ADUs in,
Yeah.
there's an impact on the stormwater system that needs to be addressed. Or if someone's saying, well, I'm ripping out concrete slabs to put this on, there wouldn't be any impact on the system. And that's one of the problems we have with any of our governmental tax systems or fee systems. You can always find inequities, you can always find the gray areas on these things. You try to set the policy in a way that applies, roughly, fairly, and equitably to the majority of people, but you're always gonna find exceptions in that situation. And sometimes we have variances and deviations, and sometimes we present, departures and recommendations as part of the review process to council to say that this is a apartment building that normally would require 100 connections, but it's serving dementia and Alzheimer patients or residents. And so the impact in this particular case is substantially less.
Yeah,
And our policies and the legislation allows us to take those things into consideration.
yeah,
Here, if the gentleman is using it only for model home and not being occupied, there would be a justification for a departure.
yeah,
But that's something that we had talked
Yep.
about previously, but didn't have the staff work up a recommendation. But obviously, we can take direction from the council and look at this as part of our overall system. As you well know, we haven't had a large number of these units come through
Yeah.
for approval previously.
yeah. I think we should take a look at that, because I'm just thinking, if you have a meter, a water meter or a utility meter, that can be a trigger. So we need to take a look at all of those things. It is complicated. It has a lot more tails to it than what we're doing here tonight. So, Councilmember Schultz.
So in looking at the ordinance as presented, I do not have a problem with the ordinance as presented if the language regarding the park dedication fee is removed. One of the reasons why staff really hauled butt to get this done is because we asked them to speed this up and do this in a hurry so that we would not pass the absolute groundbreaking time in Minnesota, because we are going to fast approach the time where you can't break ground. And that was one of the reasons why we requested, and staff did fast track this for us.
So
I am fine with looking at this again, later on, probably at the beginning of next year. But I'm fine doing that if we
waive,
can either adopt this ordinance as it's written minus the park dedication fee language, or we can waive, but I'm looking at one or the others of those.
Yep.
My preference is that we adopt as is, minus the park dedication fee language, and then we can come back to that and do a further examination, which our city attorney has listed out several things for us to look at.
yeah, so, Mr. Jamnik, I think with that what could be done is to waive the park dedication fee for this and put it as,
Mayor and council, I would advise against doing an ad hoc waiver. I'd rather the council make a policy decision in advance of a staff recommendation and delete paragraph 20 from the draft ordinance. Or keep the ordinance as presented, and then if the council decides to change this policy in the next couple months on the fee review, there's only one outstanding park fee that you could refund. But I'd rather not have a situation where you just process a deviation from an adopted ordinance without going through the variance procedure. So I think
Yeah.
I think as Councilmember Schultz laid out, those would be your two options. Either adopt it as presented with the possibility of changing the policy and refunding, or take out number 20 with the idea that you're making a long-term policy decision that will have some implications with duplexes, expansions, and other types of situations that are potentially there. Because once you don't collect this, we're not gonna be able to go back in 2 years and ask
Yeah.
him to pay for the park dedication fee and those types of things. So, it's not just this application.
yeah.
You'd be making the decision on what you're doing going forward with ADUs.
Yeah, and that's what I want to make sure is that when we're looking to the future, we're going to be addressing everything, but we need to look at it very closely. So we're all on the same page.
Well, my recommendation is to do the staff recommendation, adopt it, and then if you decide to change the policy, to refund back, that is less exposure to the city
Okay,
than going without paragraph 20 and then changing the policy.
okay,
Try to collect it later, because then they'd be gone.
okay. Councilmember Schultz?
And I do appreciate that, that's definitely, the different routes that we could go. And I do appreciate the exposure argument. But just as we can later change our policy to, here's the thing, we can change ordinances, like that's what we do. So we can adopt this ordinance as council requested, because council did not have a discussion of park dedication fees, because I do not believe that was anything we were thinking was even a part of that. So I would adopt this without the park dedication fees, and then have that be something that we discuss later, that's the portion that we bring up and discuss later to see if we want to change that ordinance further to then bring in those park dedication fees on that. That would be my suggestion. I will let my other city council members have their say on it, and then I will probably be making a motion to that effect.
Councilmember Gustafson.
Yeah, I'm going back and forth on this a little bit, but I think what you're talking about makes sense, is waive paragraph 20, bring that back for a discussion later on in life, and we can always add it back in if we kind of go, okay, in this case, we're going to do it, in this case, we're not going to do it. But until we can have that full discussion, then we're not playing around with waiving and that sort of thing, and not causing the applicant to have to put out an extra $2,600 in hopes that he may see it back someday.
Okay. Councilmember Workman.
Thank you. Just echo what's already been said, and it seems that there's general consensus on ADUs specifically and park dedication fees. And we can certainly walk through other hypothetical situations, but I think we're all in agreement that when it comes to our ADU ordinance, that we don't see the need for a park dedication fee. Agreed. Is what I'm hearing.
Well, there might be. Councilmember Keeley.
Well, just reflecting on my prior comments, I honestly, in the circumstances of ADUs, because they are singular in addition to a current residential property and residential home, I don't see the need for 20 to be involved in it at all, so I would strike it.
Okay.
I so move that we adopt it, striking 20.
Okay. There's a
Second.
motion to adopt as presented and strike 20.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Madam Mayor.
Opposed, say nay, and it passes.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Yes, Ms. Mascoli.
Just verifying, the council wants this to come back for further discussion?
Yeah, so that we're
please.
all clear
Yeah.
as to which are the triggers.
Yep, yeah,
Okay.
we could do it all-day work session or future work session.
Yeah, I think that's
Perfect,
fine, because
perfect.
this is the only one we've had in a year or two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any rush on that. We can take our
Yeah.
time and do
We'll,
it.
we'll get it in the queue.
Sometime next year. Okay. So we are done with the consent agenda, and the next one, we are at the regular agenda, and the first
Madam Mayor,
item.
Before you start, could I say something real quick?
Oh, Councilmember
No, it's
Gustafson.
fine. I wanted to talk about what just happened here. It was a great discussion. And I'd like to respectfully request from my colleagues that going forward, this is something we always used to do. If someone's going to pull something, to please
Yeah.
let us know that's being pulled, so we have time to kind of look
Yeah.
at it a second or third time before we get into this discussion. And it's just a professional courtesy, and it's to us and to our staff, so I have staff here in case we're going to pull something and they don't have the right
Yeah.
person here to answer those questions.
Thank you, Councilmember Gustafson, because that has always been our practice, is that Councilmember would inform us, and so that I can manage the meeting, and the city manager can also make sure that the appropriate staff members are here, and then prior to that, if we wanted further information for us to make a good informed decision, that can be given to us ahead of time. So, thank you for putting that on the table, Councilmember Gustafson, and reminding us about our practices. Thank you. Okay, we're at the regular agenda, and the first item on the regular agenda is our sustainability plan update. And our Public Works Director, Mr. Peterson, is going to present this, and also Ms. Sue Bast.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. We also have a consultant who is with us. Ted, are you there?
Yes,
Hello. Good
All
evening.
right.
welcome, Mr. Redmond.
Thank
Yes.
you.
So I'll very briefly introduce this, and then we'll be turning it over. But Ryan Pearson, Public Works Director, and we got Sue Bast, our Sustainability Coordinator, and then Ted Redmond from Pale LLC, who helped lead us through our Sustainability Plan update. Sue's going to lead off with some of our past accomplishments, and then Ted will go through what the plan entails, and we will try to move through this at a nice pace.
Very good. Thank you so much. And I want to thank you, Mr. Peterson, Ms. Bass, and Mr. Redmond for all of the work that you've done, because when you look back to when we first adopted our sustainability plan in 2009, we far exceeded all of the expectations. Matter of fact, to the point that the state keep trying to add more blocks because we keep far exceeding all of those markers. So who's, Ms. Sue Bast, are you
Sue's
going
gonna-
to tee it up for Mr.
Yes.
Redmond?
Good evening, Mayor, council members. As the mayor mentioned, the council adopted the original sustainability plan in 2009. And I thought I would just highlight some of the different accomplishments that we have done. And this is just a few of them, but they're very important ones, and I just wanted to make sure people remembered that of all the great stuff that has happened in the city. So Crystal Lake is off the impaired waters list. City staff used a number of strategies to reduce the phosphorus level.
Ms. Bass,
Yes?
I think you've done more than just Crystal Lake. Early Lake
Early Lake?
is off the
Yes.
impaired waters list.
Yes,
And this was all within the sustainability plan,
yes,
which is very hard to do. And Burnsville has had 2
yes.
lakes off the impaired waters list.
Thank you, yes. We have been moving to electric vehicles and equipment. We've got 3 EV charging stations, one in the parking ramp, parking deck, and a surface lot. We have a plug-in electric city vehicle and 8 hybrid Toyota Priuses, fleet vehicles, and an electric line marking robot. So those are, that electric line marking robot helps reduce not only fuel consumption, but also labor costs. As the mayor said, we are participating in the Minnesota Green Step Cities, and we have gotten the Step 5 award. That is a state recognition program that focuses on achieving sustainability goals, and Step 5 is the highest award, and only a few cities have been able to reach that level. City property conservation measures. We've been, throughout the years, we've been replacing obsolete and worn-out equipment with the most energy efficient available and using rebates from utilities to do this. Parks, recycling and organics, there's 22 parks that have recycling, and we are collecting organics at our city buildings. Potable water conservation measures, there's the Drinking Water Protection Overlay District, and a rebates program for smart irrigation controllers. Last year, we received the Soul Smart Award, a bronze award for taking steps to encourage solar energy growth. And then the Oak Savannah restoration, we received a grant to restore 26 acres of Terrace Oaks Park. And then the next slide. This one, I would just, is really kind of bringing all the different things we do together. It is the city operations greenhouse gas emission reduction graph. Using 2005 as a baseline, the city established a goal of reducing city operation emissions 15% by 2015, 30% by 2025, 80% by 2050. And those goals are in line with the state goals. And they're aggressive. The city exceeded the 2015 goal, 15%. And in 2019, greenhouse emissions from city operations were 30% lower than in 2005. That's 5 years ahead of schedule. So all the things that we've done in the past 10 years have really paid off.
Thank you.
All right.
Yes,
Any questions
very
or
nice.
comments on those? Otherwise, we'll get into the next
Okay.
phase that we're doing.
Thank you.
All right. Ted, it's all yours.
Excellent, great. Well, hello, Mayor and members of this City Council. Thank you very much for letting my two-dimensional self be with you tonight.
Well, welcome.
Thank you. And you can go ahead and click through and one more time there. So the first thing I wanted to touch is a little bit of the process in the background. We did have an engagement process as a part of this. Last summer, we began a lot of in-person sessions, showed up at events to collect input. We also had an online survey that was open for many months to collect an awful lot of input, actually. Hundreds of people took that. And then we also had an online survey here open of the last 3 months or so for folks to be able to review the draft plan. Next, please. As a part of the input, we also had significant input from a stakeholder team, which comprised a number of people from many different organizations and associations and residents throughout the community. And of course, the sustainability team had significant input because they were deeply involved in the development of the plan itself. Next slide. Before we talk about what's in the plan, I just wanted to touch, we did a number of background studies to support the plan itself. One of those was the vulnerability assessment, which we completed a few years ago, actually. And in that vulnerability assessment, we note that we have already recognized some climate change impacts in the area. We've seen some temperature increase, some increase in number of days over 95. But more importantly, as we project out through the end of the century, we anticipate a continuation of those by the end of the year or end of the century, upwards of potentially 9 degrees hotter average temperature, 30% heavier, more heavy rainfall events, and up to 56 more days over 95. Next.
He says that like it's a.
Over the last 20 years, also, we have seen an increase in extreme weather events. If we compare the 97 to 2007 versus 2007 to 2017, we've seen an increase of 46% of extreme weather events in Dakota County, with a total economic impact of over $200 million in that time frame. Next slide. So the sustainability plan itself is rooted in the City Council's commitment, sustainability commitment, and statement of Burnsville being committed to stewardship through the creative and innovative approaches to natural resources, financial, and equity. Next slide. Great, thank you. The overarching goals of the plan beyond that can be summed up by indicating that the goals are to protect Burnsville's natural resources, the protection of Burnsville's most vulnerable, and community-wide greenhouse gas reduction goals in line with the state of Minnesota. And as Sue just described, that's 40% emissions, percent below 2005 emissions by 2030, and then 80% below by 2050. Next slide. The plan is organized around 10 technical sections or sectors, and each of those sectors, beyond broad sustainability measures, also include strategies and actions related to that greenhouse gas emission reduction goal, as well as climate adaptation actions and strategies. That's what those little symbols there denote. Next, please. So we'll just take a quick, to try to keep it at, in a short time frame, rather than getting into the detail of, 130-page document, we were just going to give you some highlights. Looking first at the buildings and energy section, that section has 4 primary goals with a number of supporting strategies and detailed actions on how to get to those goals. An example of one of those goals is Goal A, which is a 10% decrease in residential and commercial electric use citywide, again, in line with the overarching goals. Next slide, please. Community health has 5 overall goals, and an example would be D, to develop a standardized educational program on ways to improve conservation and pollution reduction. Next slide. Fleet and equipment has 3 guiding goals. An example of that is A, emissions and fuel reductions associated with the city's fleet operations. Next slide. Ground cover has 3 driving goals. An example of that would be A, to increase the tree canopy cover and diversity citywide, achieving 33% coverage by 2030. Next slide. Land use has 3 guiding goals. An example of that would be A, to increase citywide acres of transit-oriented development by 10% by 2030. Next slide. Local food has 2 guiding goals. And an example would be the first one there, increase number of community gardens to 6 citywide by 2030 with a prioritization to neighborhoods with limited food access, limited vehicle access, and elevated poverty. Next slide, please. Renewable energy has 3 guiding goals. And an example of that would be A, which is to achieve a 7.5% on-site solar for residential and commercial uses by 2030. Next slide. Solid waste also has 3 guiding goals. And C is a good example of one, which is to promote commercial and multifamily recycling. Next slide. Transportation has 4 overarching goals. And an example would be C, to increase electric vehicle adoption to 10% of citywide vehicle use by 2030. Next slide. And water, the last technical section, really has a dual focus. It focuses both on drinking water quality as well as surface water quality. Clearly, they do relate to each other. And a good example of one of the 4 overarching goals would be B, to meet Burnsville's total maximum daily load, the TMDL, requirements for Alamagnet and Keller Lakes. Next slide, please. So all of these actions are integrated into an implementation and monitoring plan, which is the last section of the report. And what I like to point out is for a comprehensive, robust sustainability plan like this, implementation really ends up being all of us. It's city council, it's staff members, and it's residents and businesses in the community. Next slide, please. The implementation matrix that is in the back of the report details out a responsibility matrix for each action, who would be leading responsibility, who's supporting responsibility, and even some estimated budgets where appropriate or possible to estimate at this point in time. And those actions are all organized into major project groupings. And the purpose for that is to easily pull together robust actions together into one project or 2 projects that could be done on an annual basis or at least organized together, where implementing one project grouping can touch a number of goals and actions across all of the sectors or many of the sectors at once. So the major project groupings that we've organized here are all organized around themes, but you can see where they can touch multiple categories. Next slide, please. And the one thing that I'll touch on, we talked about the online survey for the draft report. So the final draft report, or the final report as we're presenting here, has been online for 3 months or so. And throughout all of the sectors, people had the opportunity to provide comments on each section. The support for the plan, I would say, was pretty positive. We've got almost 80% of the respondents being in agreement of and supportive of the plan strongly. 5% that were not supportive, and then the balance were kind of right in the middle, neither here nor there. Next slide.
Not going to please everyone, Mr. Redmond.
That's right. I keep trying, though. Ryan, would you like to talk a little bit about this slide?
Right, and I got the last one before questions or comments. To make this plan happen, obviously it's gonna require some funding on different items. One of the things we'll be looking forward to, clearly not in 2021, but in order to complete some of the things that don't fit in nicely to one of our different departments now, and to really get out in the community to do things like talk about community health, or how we can making sure everyone knows that their house is solar, is a good place for solar. It'll just be a couple things. We'll need some more assistance. Right now we have one half-time FTE dedicated to this, and we think in order to make this plan a reality in 10 years and make it through it, we would need a full-time person. So at some point we would come to you, definitely not a 2021 item, but we will be bringing that forth hopefully in the next 2 to 5 years for consideration. And then how are we going to get all this done? Well, basically what we plan on doing is bringing different topics to you. You saw the 10 or 11 major projects. Like this year, it's already in the budget to do the multimodal plan. The natural resources master plan update is in there that meets this. And there was one more item that we're for sure planning. Oh yeah, the fleet study, where we plan on going through our entire fleet system to make it as.
Can you put the pillars of success up?
Say it again?
The pillars of success, you know, the grouping? Yeah. There. The plan framework. Use the same language.
Right, there we go. So we'd be bringing forth different projects within those on an annual basis in order to knock off whatever makes the most sense that different departments can handle at the time. So there isn't one master, the plan is going to cost us this much. We plan on coming to you with different budget items as we go forward through the years to accomplish these things. Okay. So with that is the primary presentation. We're looking for any input on this, and we can make any modifications, and then we'd be hoping to bring this back to you by the end of the year for a final adoption.
So I think one of the things that our residents and everybody needs to know, this is looking at our whole function as a city. And one of the things that I know, Ms. Bast, and you hear from me all the time, because our partners and our businesses are doing a great deal around reduction in greenhouse gases. Example, what happened with the actions that Black Dog Plant have done. Just by going to combined cycle, and in 2015, I think it was April 13th, 2015, we saw the last coal train come into Black Dog. Just that action of not using coal, I think reduced the footprint of greenhouse gas in that area, at least this is what the president told me, 46%. So when we look at that, and you look at what I remember when Costco came in for their development and all of the practices that they were going to put in place with regard to sustainability and all of that. And I think a lot of them have done a lot of that. I wonder if we took a survey of what our companies are doing. That could also give us some insight on what the city's really footprint is.
One thing to note on that is one of the items is to create a sustainability checklist for PUDs and city finance projects, so that there will be clearly defined PUD benefits based upon sustainability that we'd work with our developers on to more clearly identify this is what we want. Maybe they're gonna get a reduction in green space, but they make it, the building solar ready, or better yet, put solar panels on or put an electric charge. So one of the items that we would be working on through the years would be that exact thing.
Yeah, and because the one thing that we did with the Heart of the City is that we included a lot of practices that were sustainable practices.
Yeah, we continue to make more in
Yeah.
that as well.
And I think, Mr. Peterson, and a lot of the work that's going on in Public Works today, especially when we're looking at street reconstruction and all of that, you're reusing all of that, and we're using less and less of the raw materials that's coming in, because you're reusing when you pulverize and reuse the concrete or the,
Asphalt,
yeah,
Yeah.
asphalt.
right, and then we don't have to truck, so there's
Yeah.
much less trucking going on than there would be if it was all brand new material, correct?
Yeah, so, okay. Council members, any thoughts? I mean, I'm excited about all of this work because, but what we're going to be doing is making sure that our community continues to be viable and vibrant for our children and grandchildren. And that, we're making sure that they know what a Savannah oak looks like.
Yep, we're working to get phase 3, trying to get a
Yeah.
grant this year, so we're continuing out there.
Yeah. Okay. Any thoughts? I think when you bring that in, I think we should always make sure that we have a good understanding of it. And then how much, and I know you said that it's not going to be for 21, but for 22, and perhaps, what are we going to need to make some of these efforts a reality? And everything we do is going to need some money to make it a reality. Okay? Is that, Councilmember Gustafson?
I like the plan. I'm excited about community gardens throughout the city. I'm trying to identify where we would put all those, because it requires water and all kinds of different things that'll go with it. But that's an exciting, and I know we already have plans for our city vehicles to go to electric. I think we're already in that process of doing some of that now,
Yeah.
so.
Yep. I think, was it 20%, Mr. Peterson?
Well, one exciting thing is this year on the police cruisers is be the first year we are purchasing hybrid Ford Explorer police cruisers. So they found out now that they meet all the needs of the police and can be in that road. And that's a vehicle that goes 100,000 miles in 3 years. So we're really getting bang for our buck from sustainability on those. So the way we'll measure that is comparing it to gas. Hybrid, isn't necessarily all plug-in, but there'll be some that'll be plug-in. And the fleet study that we're proposing will get into an electrification goal as well.
So I was thinking on those community gardens, we have to look at our partnerships because, we started them out at Neal Park, and then we needed to have one out on the east side. But a lot of our partnerships with the churches and with the Y and with arbors, those are all wonderful community gardens all over the city. So let's not all try to do it ourselves, but let's partner with our community. Councilmember
I
Gustafson?
just want to add on to that. It's kind of struck me when you talked about PUDs and that sort of thing. And I can see where at some point, well, maybe with some of the multi-unit type buildings, that a community garden becomes part of what they build out there for all their apartment dwellers and all that. And
Yep.
I mean, it's just something to think about as we move along here.
Yeah.
How we structure all this and that.
Well, that's how we started on the west side, because there were all these folks who live in apartments or townhouses, and they didn't have the land space, so they wanted to have gardens, and so we took part of our park system and made it into a community
Maybe
garden.
give them credits for those gardens towards
Yeah.
green space and things like that, and at an accelerated rate, or.
Matter of fact, we sold all the plots, and there were people on wait lists.
Although I did like Kara's idea a few years ago of having some orchards around town here, just so people could just pick an apple.
Right?
Well,
And
You have something to add on that?
Well,
You're gonna make my night?
If you go back to the presentation, one of the, I don't know if you can show on the screen, but it is local agriculture and
Yep.
nutrition security study and plan is one of our major project groups. So that would be, all this kind of thing would be on the table. They've talked about
Yeah.
making agriculture available in the lowlands of the Minnesota River. So also just, this would be an example of one where we would need a full-time person in sustainability to post. We just don't have it doesn't fit into.
You don't
any of
have the
our groups.
manpower right now.
Exactly, so.
Yeah.
But this is the kind of stuff we want to do because one of the overarching goals is the
Yeah.
most vulnerable populations. And if you can grow your own food, and this is one way to meet a goal if you can't.
You know, I really like what Valley Natural Foods is doing too.
Yes.
And then out by the maintenance center, do you have something going on over there?
You have a rain garden.
You have a rain garden, okay, yeah, that's what, okay.
It looks pretty nice in the summer.
Yeah, but Valley Natural Foods garden is really nice,
It is something.
yeah.
I heard that
Okay.
gets very political over there. I said I heard that gets very political over there with space.
Yes, I know. Okay, is there anything else? This is really terrific stuff.
No, we're excited. I mean, we're happy to see you guys are excited about it. We are very excited about it. This is stuff that's fun to do.
Yeah.
And you know you're making a difference. And we intend upon moving forward. Like you said, you're gonna have 3-4 items out of this already planned for 2021.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Mr. Redmond, for all of your help.
Thank you, and if I may, I just wanted to thank you, first of all, for letting us work with you all on this project. We've been very honored to work with really a fantastic team. The city of Burnsville has amazing staff, so thank you for that experience. But more importantly, I want to thank you just as somebody who lives in this metropolitan area. Thank you very much for your leadership as a city and helping to illustrate the right way to go with sustainability. So thank you for those efforts.
Thank you, thank you, okay.
All right?
So, thank you very much, great work, keep on.
We'll be back sometime this fall yet with final plan adoption.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Mascali, your update.
Madam Mayor and Council, we have tonight Ms. Jenny Rhodey, who will provide a brief financial update for the council on COVID, a brief COVID update.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members. As we've done at various times through this pandemic, I'm here to just give a brief update on some few select areas, kind of some things we've been tracking in previous updates. This first slide looks at general fund charges for services and kind of where we land with those. This through August, we've collected, and the major areas here include EMS revenues and charges, engineering charges to projects. Those are kind of our two major areas. There's also, other fees included in this total. Actual charges through August, revenues that we've collected are about 3.4 million, at about 54% of our budget for 2020. So those fees are down. One of the major impacts was ambulance runs and EMS revenues during the early stages of the pandemic were really down for a few months. Those have come back to normal or exceed normal levels, but we still do expect to be under budget, approximately $775,000 for the year, or about 12%. Permit revenues through September 30th are at $1.1 million, or about 72% of budget. At the current rate, we expect to be around $95,000 under budget for the year. Now, there are a couple of projects, apartment projects that are in the pipeline. It just remains to be seen whether those will be received in 2020 or 2021, but we do still expect those.
That's pretty good, 95,000 out of $1.5 million. That's
About 5 or 6%, yeah.
yeah. In a year like this, that's remarkable.
Yeah, so we've kind of maintained, and we budget for an average year, so, we're just under an average year.
Right.
This slide kind of looks at a few of our recreational
areas. First, recreation program fees in the general fund. That revenue item through September 30th is about $135,000, or about 43% of budget. Recreation program fees with, the kind of the halt on programming, reduced softball fees and reduced facility reservations really account for the most of that. Those are offset too by the fact that we didn't hire seasonals in those areas, so that did help offset that in the general fund. Ice Center revenues through September 30th are $458,000, about 40% of budget. Certainly, the closure for over 3 months impacted the Ice Center, as well as, they're operating in a reduced capacity. They're not able to do concessions. I don't believe we're doing Learn to Skate at this time. So there are some areas that they're just not able to collect revenue. We're moving into the winter season, and so hopefully we can, that is the busiest season. We'll keep monitoring this area. And the golf course, good news on that.
Yeah.
We're at 110% of budget there. The rounds have exceeded the loss in league fees, so that's some good news in that front. At the bottom here, we just have projections for kind of net loss, net income for the year for the two areas. Ice Center, we're projecting around $257,000 net loss for the year. The golf course is projected to have net income of about $49,000. So. And this final slide, just an update on city COVID-19 costs funded through CARES through September. I think it's been a couple months since we've kind of looked at where those expenses are. Direct costs, overtime, emergency paid sick leave, PPE, other supplies, those kinds of expenses, we're at about $470,000. And we have a couple of projects, or kind of larger items that are going. We have that HVAC negative ion generator project in the facilities fund of about $130,000. That is currently underway, or going to be getting underway. And we have a couple of IT projects, which include teleconferencing improvements in the community rooms. I believe we've got equipment for remote work and a scheduling, I think an online scheduling app. So those make up about $92,000. And the remaining grant in the general fund will go towards eligible public safety and other staff payroll costs going towards the pandemic.
Thank you. Questions for Ms. Rhodey? Councilmember Gustafson.
Not really a question. You kind of alluded to the fact that we can't do concessions at the Ice Center, and I assume other things like our ballparks and things like that. And it's kind of struck me, and I've talked about this before. Maybe during this downtime, it's a good time for us to look at maybe leasing out our concessions to privates to come in and run all of our discount concessions in the city, where we're not responsible for that any longer, except for collecting rent from these people. And hopefully they'll upgrade the concessions that we have throughout our system out here. So anyways, it's something just to think about. I just want to throw it out there while we're down and we're talking about it, because I don't think we'll be selling concessions anytime soon, but it's certainly a good opportunity for us to look at other avenues besides just doing it ourselves again maybe next year.
Mr. Peterson?
Yeah, I can speak to that just briefly, but like at Crystal Beach Park this year, we did work with food truck operators so that they could go there, so it wasn't like there was no service on this at all. But that would be, a little bit different than, actually operating our building.
Could be one and the same. A food truck operator might want to lease one of those kitchens, so.
Yes, indeed. And we'd have to determine the difference between us in there or them in there versus a food truck, but.
Yeah, I would like
That would need a commissary.
Yeah, I would like to see an analysis from staff on the advantage and disadvantages when you do that, because I think, we can take a look at all of those things. It might be,
Okay.
You want this at all-day work session?
yeah.
They do it in other cities.
Ms. Muscali and Ms. Rhodey, did you want us to act on the resolution that's before us?
There is.
There's
Resolution?
no resolution. yet.
This is
Well,
informational, I think, right?
I think
Did you
that's,
catch one that I missed there?
We,
There, yeah.
excuse me.
supporting reopening
There-
local
yeah,
businesses
it's,
for safe
it's a
operation.
Oh, yes,
It's more the
excuse me.
state.
There's a
Right.
resolution in the background that has to do with the city council to
Yeah.
support reopening local business, and this is something that Ms. Mescali and I have been talking about. So you want us to act on adopting this resolution tonight?
Yeah, Madam Mayor and Council, I'm sorry, I had, CARES money and finance
Yeah.
stuff on the
Yeah.
brain, so I had lost sight of this. Earlier this summer, the council had passed a resolution encouraging the governor on some reopening strategies, and I thought it would be something the council may want to consider as well to, as we get into the winter months. So happy to make any edits you'd like to see or adopt it as presented.
Members of the council, I participated in a call yesterday with the governor. This was a call with the mayors from Minnesota, and he's been very good on a monthly basis to meet with us, and this item was on the table for discussion. So, but they're continuing to look at the numbers. So it's very open, but he understands that, we need to make sure that our businesses can continue to thrive again. And so I think the resolution, if you look at it, is appropriate, and I'd like for us to adopt it, and so it can be sent. Councilmember Schultz?
Yes, absolutely. I think we should adopt this when we had the discussion about looking at adopting a resolution. The genesis of this was the chamber had adopted a resolution to send to the governor, and some of the information included in that resolution is startling, such as losing 40% of our hospitality, I believe, within this winter time. That's a tough projection to see, and just stand by. So I do think that as the chambers are becoming more active and more insistent, I am definitely in support of them. I'm in support of our not just our local businesses that are trying to survive, but people that are hoping they have a job, that they will be able to pay their bills. We are starting to see not just primary layoffs in what you see as normally affected situations, which is, your hospitality and that type of thing. But we are now starting to see our layoffs in our medical areas and in our manufacturing areas. And that is deeply concerning to me. So I wholeheartedly support our resolution. I do urge our governor to return control to local control, rather than these just statewide one-size-fits-all rules, which are one-size-fits-none. And we can work with our businesses, and our businesses have done amazing things. They are working hard to protect their employees. They're working hard to make a safe environment for customers or clients, and we have to start trusting them. We have to start working with them and trusting them in a meaningful manner.
Yeah.
So I am wholeheartedly
Yeah.
in support of this, and thank you very much.
Yeah, and he understands in our conversation that one size doesn't fit all, because what may fit for Metro south of the river is not going to be the same for Ely. And so he understands all of that. And we're going to continue to work together on all of this. But a resolution communicates where the city of Burnsville stands on all of this. Councilmember Gustafson.
Madam Mayor, I also support this resolution. Most of you know I take this COVID very serious. I wear my mask, I social distance where I'm supposed to, and we take precautions. But I also work very tightly with the retail and restaurants. And of course, music festivals, all kinds of different things we do. And we have found ways to play by the rules and get things done. And I think most of the businesses out there take this serious as well. And they will do what it takes to enhance whatever security they have to do as we open up a bit more. I agree, in the beginning, there was a lot of fighting about all this stuff. I think that some of that has settled down now. people are accepting the fact that, yeah, this is real.
Yeah.
We need to kind of take care of it. It's going to be with us for a while. So they're learning how to work with it and around it to make things happen. So I think it's time that in our state that we can start opening up a bit more and, you know, just put it on our citizens. I mean, it's, the business will do their job, but it's also our job as citizens to be part of that solution with these businesses so they can stay open. And
Yeah, and he talked about, you know, working with the Restaurant Association, because for them too, they're looking at consumer confidence, if people don't feel like. So the thing that we need to make sure, from my perspective, is that continue to wear the mask and then have contact tracing if you open it up 100%. Then you know, because the restaurants are saying, you know, we want to make sure people are comfortable coming in, because if something happens and they have to shut down because, you know, somebody on their staff is diagnosed with COVID-19, then they shut down. So they truly understand. I think everyone is trying to make sure that we all work through all of this together, but it is time for us to make sure that our business will continue to thrive. But they also need to look at, from my perspective, what is their business going to look like a year from now, 2 years from now, and what kind of business plan can they put in place to say that I can sustain this and thrive after we find a vaccine. So may I have a motion to adopt the resolution, please?
Motion to adopt.
Second.
third,
Okay, Councilmember Schultz makes the motion, second by Councilmember Keely. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay, and the motion carries.
Madam
Ms.
Mayor?
Yes?
Just one comment on that. Was this resolution shared with our business community and other partners like the Chamber, the CVB, you know, other agencies that have done similar?
Ms. Mascoli, I think you might have had some conversation, but
Madam Mayor and Council, we intend to share it with the Chamber following council
yeah.
adoption.
You know, it's not
It's not
appropriate
official
for
until
them
we
to go out
pass
there and
it,
share
but
it
yeah.
without us having our eyeballs on it and adopting it. I think you're doing the right thing.
Sure, and I know it's published in our meeting materials, but it's kind of buried in there, and I think it would have deserved a call out to our partners to make sure that they're aware of it and working, because they may want to turn around and once it's officially passed by us as it was presented, help us publish it and strengthen the voice. We need these partners.
I think they will. Okay, so Ms. Mascoli, is there anything else other than that we've adopted the resolution for tonight?
I don't think so, Madam Mayor. Happy to stand for any questions.
Okay, if there are no questions for Ms. Mascoli and Ms. Rhodey,
move to adjourn.
I was just going to say, there are no other items to come before this body. And Councilmember Gustafson makes the motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Workman. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay, and the motion carries. Good evening, and thank you for being with us.